Good morning, Australian time. We are getting towards the morning hours. We are well into the morning hours by now. 9 PM here at Force 13 HQ. That's on the universal clock. GMT plus 0. You're looking at Cyclone Trevor, which is on its way to making landfall just over the border in the Northern Territory, not far from the border with Queensland. It's a Category 4 on the Australian scale, Category 3 on the Saffir Simpson scale. A cyclone warning is in effect for Alyangula all the way round to Burketown. That includes many locations inland, including how far inland there? Creswell Downs, Brunette Downs, Cape Crawford, almost as far as Tennant Creek, but not quite. Cyclone Veronica is approaching landfall as well, but it's going to take a much longer amount of time before it gets there. Cyclone warnings are in effect from Wallal Downs in the east to Mardy in the west. Landfall is expected to occur just west of Port Hedland. In the watch zone, Marble Bar and Nullagine. Invest 96W doesn't look very impressive. We've got a phone call here at Force 13 HQ, would you believe? Nothing I can do about that. That's what's left of Savannah, and this is what Joaninha looks like right now. Meteo France expect it to make landfall on Rodrigues. It's a possibility, but cones are there for a reason, and the centre of the storm could pass anywhere within that cone. It is intensifying right now, was named earlier today, and could intensify significantly before arriving in 3 days' time. The track for Trevor looks like this. Weakening quickly to a Category 1 by 4 AM on March 24th, Eastern Time, and then downgrading to a low pressure system as it curves round gradually, progressively towards the east. Veronica's track looks like this. First moving towards the southeast, although it is moving south at this time. Landfall location possibly just west of Port Hedland. Again, the cone is there for a reason, and it could still track further west. Computer models look like this. As you can see, for Trevor, pretty widespread models there. Not much of a consensus, especially when you go out to long range. Short range though looks fairly clear. It's definitely going to make landfall near lunchtime in the region that we've just discussed, and then curve towards the south and southeast. Cyclone Veronica could stall along the coast of Western Australia, or it could move in towards the east and then loop round back towards the west. That could happen in the next few days. We're not expecting landfall until probably, let's see here, Sunday morning. Early hours of Sunday morning is probably going to be the landfall time now. That's according to the Bureau of Meteorology. They expect it maybe around 6 AM. Speculative, that could change a lot. And this is the track forecast for Cyclone Joaninha. You can just about make out Rodrigues on the red line in the centre there. They are really staring down the barrel on this storm if it intensifies as we expect it to in the next 3 days. Nothing going on in the North Atlantic, nothing going on in the East Pacific or the Central Pacific. And here's a look from the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre at those 3 active systems that are dominating their respective basins. Here's a look at a potential South Atlantic storm which could emerge off the coast of Brazil tomorrow. And the Cyclone Idai death toll continues to rise. As you can see at the bottom of your screen, it is now responsible for at least 638 fatalities and over 2,000 injuries. A humanitarian crisis continuing to grow in Mozambique. If you've got any comments or questions for us whilst we're on the air this hour, send us a message. Either on the YouTube stream or on social media. But a word of warning, it might take me a little while to get to you because it's just me here for the time being. We've run out of staff. So do bear with me. This is the imagery of Cyclone Veronica right now, and we'll be fielding questions on any of those three systems throughout this hour. It's 9 UTC, and this is Force 13's continuing live coverage. Chances of storm conditions very high in those regions. Tennant Creek even at 78%. For Veronica, on the left hand side of your screen there, you can see those percentage chances. 75% in Karratha, 75% in Dampier, 70% in Onslow, and 85% in Port Hedland. Pretty much assured that tropical storm force winds will be occurring. I think David's back. David? No, we'll try you again.
Yes, I'm here for... You got me, Nathan?
Yep, we've got you.
Okay, apology, viewers. I have one of my grandsons. I've got to do some child mining for about 2 hours.
Well, you didn't expect to hear that on the stream tonight, did you?
Yeah, well, you never know, but I am very concerned for the people in the cyclone warning region for Veronica. Apparently storm surge could be 15 meters, Nathan. 15
meters, that's a lot.
That is a lot. Destructive winds, waves of over 15 meters. Storm surge, torrential rain will be affecting an area with a population of over 30,000 people for a day. Most in the firing line for the cyclone in WA are the towns of Karratha and Port Hedland. And unlike Cyclone Trevor, Nathan, Veronica is expected to fall apart on the coastline and not penetrate far inland. The remnants of Veronica will last all week in WA, with heavy tropical showers both inland and in coastal areas. They may drift as far south as Perth, but nothing too substantial is expected there at this stage. And Nathan, that information is from weatherwatch.co.New Zealand.
Okay.
They are really, we have a contact in New Zealand, and it's the weatherwatch.co.New Zealand. Philip is the owner operator, and he also operates on Facebook, but considering New Zealand, that he is keeping a close eye on the Australian scene, and showing some rain graphic, but rainfall is going to be significant. And I'm still
we'll come
waiting
back to that, David. Cyclone Trevor just about to make landfall, not too far away. It looks very close on the satellite imagery, but maybe a little bit misleading. Radar still shows it not moving very quickly. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, I'm just looking at the Mornington line of radar now.
This is fascinating. You can clearly see the two eyes, the two eye walls.
And Nathan, Veronica, looking at the radar, it started to clear out.
It just baffles me sometimes how the radar imagery can look so much different to the infrared satellite imagery.
But you can clearly, as you just said, you can clearly see the eye feature, and it's 125 millimetres of rain for Mornington Island. The Mornington Island would have been evacuated. I haven't cited any information, but I know Groot Island was, because the Air Force had a couple of flights.
Alright, some questions. Is Trevor still strengthening? I don't think so. And it won't be able to when it's looking like that. With very little time before landfall, by the way. We had another question here. I want to know why Mauritius doesn't get a direct hit from a cyclone anymore. It feels that way, doesn't it? They've had so many occasions where, you know, the storms were supposed to hit and they just ended up missing. I guess it's just because Mauritius is very much a needle in a haystack, isn't it, David? And a direct landfall is pretty rare for a place like that. It is a fairly small island, 20 or 30 miles wide, and a hurricane force conditions in a storm usually only just about 40 or 50 miles wide. When it hits a much bigger landmass like Australia, you know, it's so much bigger than a place like Mauritius. Somewhere's going to get the worst of the winds, even if it's in the middle of nowhere. Whereas Mauritius isn't so much like that. But, you know, Mauritius will get a big hit one day. It's a matter of when. Preparation has to continue. And I do certainly understand how public faith could be deteriorating in those meteorological organisations that have been saying so often that there's going to be a storm when it didn't quite turn out that way. It's just a pretty unfortunate location because it's quite an uncertain region of the Indian Ocean.
Nathan, can I add to that with this question? Is it related to the steering mechanisms that prevent a direct hit on Mauritius?
It can play a factor, and high pressures blocking ridges and things like that. But it's just Mauritius and Réunion are small islands in the middle of the ocean, and yes, tropical storm force winds can happen and have happened from some of those recent storms, but sometimes it's media hype as well that's the issue, and they say, you know, catastrophic conditions likely, or hurricane conditions, or a big Category 5 hurricane is coming. That doesn't mean to say that a Category 5 is going to hit with full force. Full conditions of the storm could be just offshore, but I digress in any case. Anything else?
Just looking at the ATCF file, I have Trevor located 15.6 degrees south, 138.2 degrees east, 105 knots, central pressure 952 millibars. Bureau Meteorology has it at, just looking at 950. Okay. And expected to be 996 and be located 18.5 degrees south, 135.2 degrees east at 24 UTC. So 950 down to 996, Nathan.
33 miles from land.
And northwest quarter winds turning clockwise, 240 nautical miles of severe tropical cyclone Trevor.
A question just came in there. Do you think Cyclone Veronica's track is almost like Cyclone Kwang's track? No. Cyclone Kwang had a much more pronounced curve. Other questions that I just missed there as well. Winds in Borroloola is supposed to be 37 miles an hour. Does that sound right? It sounds a tad low to have 95% of tropical storm force winds. You'll have to confirm whether that's right now or whether you're talking about a forecast there. If it's a forecast, then that sounds completely wrong to me. Get back to me on that. I think that was all of them there. David?
Severe tropical cyclone Veronica. I'm going by the Bureau's information, 9:44 bars. 18.2 degrees south, 117 east. Forecast 9:49, near 20.5 degrees south, 118.4 degrees east at 24. So 9:44, and they have it at 24 UTC at 949 millibars. And Veronica is 961.
Which I think is a bit high.
Well, the Bureau, they've updated their high seas forecast and they update every 12 hours, and they have it at 9. What did I say? 9:40. Well, sorry, viewers. 9:40, 9:44, and they have it increasing to 9:49. So not much difference. So,
well, quite a bit.
yeah, it's quite a bit to what the ATCF file information. And Nathan, looking at the NOAA floater and the visible,
are you?
Yes, you could clearly see that the cloud, it's clearing out. Where
have you gone? I've lost your audio here.
You got me?
Yep. We will get visible images of Cyclone Trevor very soon, in about 20 minutes, perhaps less. So there's the latest imagery of Trevor on David's screen.
Yeah, sorry, apology for the chopping and change a bit. You can clearly see the, would I be right to say, pinhole eye?
I'm not sure I'd want to call it that. It does look a bit like a pinhole eye on the infrared imagery, but from what we've seen, it's a very shallow double eye wall feature, don't forget.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're trying to look at eye structure, David, radar's by far the best place to look.
Well, especially when I look at the Mornington Iron one, but
on anyone, any radar that's worth its salt.
But I'm very, very happy that there's a radar station on Mornington Island. It actually came as a surprise to me.
Yeah, I don't think it's been there a while.
I really don't know how long it's been there, but it is, because normally it was Reaper or the Gove. I'm positive it's a new one. I could be wrong, but
I don't.
But I
know.
haven't seen it. No. You can clearly see the inner eye and quite a bit of yellow appearing in the main band on the western side of it. And
people acting very surprised.
Go on.
People acting very surprised that Trevor has two eyes. In effect, it isn't. It is somewhat uncommon. It's not particularly rare. It has happened many times in the past. I'm not sure I can remember that many instances in this part of the world that it's happened, but they've been quite common in the Pacific, in the Western Pacific Basin in particular, from what we've seen. A bit more, still not particularly common, but there is an example right there of a concentric eye wall, and it would appear that it might just be moving a bit towards the southwest at the minute, which I suppose is about right. I'm not sure. I mean, it would appear the inner eye wall might be moving west and the outer one a bit towards the southwest. It shows to me, if anything, a sign that the inner eye wall might be weakening and that it's getting dragged along a bit more with the rotation of the bigger eye now, perhaps. But there is the latest imagery, radar imagery of Trevor, which is more valuable than the satellite imagery of the storm. When radar is available, it does take precedent over satellite observations where possible. And it's just one of 3 storms that we're tracking this morning / tonight, depending on where you are around the world. Trevor is a category 4 on the Australian scale, and so is Veronica. Veronica is visible here. And Joaninha, also forming earlier in the southwest Indian Ocean, could reach Rodrigues as a significant cyclone as well. Well, we'll play a short video feature here now as well. We just like to point to everyone's attention that yesterday, as it is now, the 22nd, of course, local time in Australia, it's still the 22nd here at Force 13 HQ, is actually the 20th anniversary since Cyclone Vance affected the west coast of Australia too. And we've made a short video clip to show that one as well, so we're going to play that now. The late 90s featured an abundance of activity in the Australian region, including a few very strong tropical cyclones. Most of these cyclones made their peak out at sea or before striking land, weakening as they did make landfall. One notable exception occurred on this day 20 years ago, on March 22nd, Cyclone Vance. Its whole lifespan began in mid-March near the top end of Australia, moving out into the open Indian Ocean and then curving towards the south by making landfall in Western Australia on the 22nd and then moving inland towards the southeast. Vance reached Category 5 status on the Australian scale, Category 4 on the Saffir Simpson scale, with an estimated pressure at peak of 910 millibars. Like all storms, it did weaken a little bit before landfall, making landfall with a pressure recorded of 937.8 millibars, still a Category 4 on the Saffir Simpson scale, and a Category 5 on the Australian scale at landfall. It did survive as a cyclone as it crossed the whole of Western Australia, reaching the southern tip still as a tropical storm. A major storm surge of up to 4 meters combined with the wind speed of this storm caused 10% of buildings to be damaged or destroyed in Exmouth. The storm also caused widespread erosion on the Pilbara coast from its huge storm surge, and a wind gust at the Learmonth Meteorological Office reached 267 kilometers per hour. Well, we're back with Cyclone Veronica here, and there it is. Comparable to Vance, perhaps? Probably not. Vance was stronger and was a bit further west than Veronica is right now, and Veronica's probably moving a bit more slowly too. Have we got David back yet? Nope, I don't think we have. The chances of storm force winds on the left hand side there, 85% in Port Hedland, and if you missed that graphic just as I have, I can get all those numbers again for you and read them out here. I'll just read out where we are at this stage of play really. For Cyclone Trevor, chances of storm force winds in following percentages: Borroloola 95, Mornington Island 90, Port Roper 85, Tennant Creek 78, Alice Springs 56, and Mount Isa 26. Chance of storm force winds from Cyclone Veronica: Pardue at 45%, Port Hedland 85, Roebourne 80, Karratha 75, Dampier 75, Onslow 70, Exmouth 50, Coral Bay 50, and Carnarvon 35%. Chance of storm force winds from Cyclone Joaninha: in Rodrigues it's 80%. And possibly not tropical by this point, but in Isle Amsterdam it's 45%, and at Isle St Paul also 45%. Expected rainfall from Cyclone Trevor: in Borroloola 190 millimeters, Port Roper 60, Tennant Creek 80, Alice Springs 120, Mount Isa 50, Birdsville 170, Quilpie 240, Charleville 180, and Brisbane 160. From Cyclone Veronica, expected rainfall in millimeters as follows: in Pardue 120, Port Hedland 490 millimeters expected there at the minute, 50 at Roebourne, Karratha 50, Dampier 40, Onslow 30, Exmouth 30, Coral Bay 20, and Carnarvon 80. And expected rainfall from Cyclone Joaninha: in Rodrigues 420 millimeters, that's quite a large amount as well, 50 in Flack, and 40 millimeters of rain expected in the capital of Mauritius, Port Louis. We continue to look at imagery of Cyclone Veronica, and interesting turn of events there. It would appear that the eye is doing something. I'm really not sure. Now, that would be what I would expect Trevor to look like right now, to be honest, because it sort of looks like it's got two eye walls as well. I don't think it does. Just some cloudiness in the centre of the eye. Still quite a fractured eye wall in any case. Delivering quite large amounts of rain already to the coastline. As David said earlier, perhaps not extending particularly far inland, the rainfall. Certainly the wind won't extend too far inland. And obviously the surge really only affects the first few kilometres inland. But that surge could still be very significant when it reaches those coastal towns. And we could be looking at the biggest landfall in quite some years, as we saw in an earlier trail, which I think we'll be showing again a little bit later on tonight. 2013, December, was the last time we had a storm of this strength approaching the coast of Western Australia. Cyclone Christine. Before that we had Cyclone Rusty, which was slightly, well, about the same intensity as this one actually, in early 2013. And the last really big one was probably Cyclone George in 2007. If you have any more questions for us whilst we're on the air, please send us a message. Start your message with Force 13 all in text in the YouTube chat. It will light up for me in the comments and I'll be able to see you. You can also message us live on our Facebook stream as well, and we'll get to that as soon as we can. Hopefully we'll have more people joining us in a little while, but at the minute it's just me. Let's see what comments we've got here. So, just coming back at me earlier about the Borroloola 37 miles an hour being a forecast, apparently, according to Gamer Agent. And I think that is weird, for lack of a better word. I would expect much stronger winds in that area. Not knowing the local geography, but I assume that it is pretty uniform. Of course, any exposed or high profile locations in altitude will of course get much stronger wind gusts. But I would certainly expect at least mid-range to high-range tropical storm force winds in Borroloola, depending on how well Trevor keeps hold of its core when it first makes landfall. I'm not sure if we no, we still, alright, we're still waiting for David to head back here, but hopefully that will happen soon. Alright, how can the storms get two eyes? So we're sort of saying Trevor's got two eyes. I mean, some people might think of two eyes next to each other, but it's actually one inside the other when it comes to Trevor. You can't see it particularly on the satellite imagery. You can see it more on the radar imagery, but this is the satellite right now showing Trevor. And I guess it's just really a result of a storm that's really been struggling with eye wall replacement cycles one after the other, and I suppose two eye walls form together before one managed to get completed. I think it's more prevalent, I mean the causes aren't really well known at all, but I think it is more prevalent when a storm has collided with land and is coming out of that over more water. I think you're more likely to see concentric eye walls when that occurs, or a long tracking storm that has had an eye wall collapse, and then something like probably the most well publicized example being Cyclone Winnie back in 1997. Alright, a little bit later than scheduled. We're going to take a short break here. We'll be back in a few minutes with the latest on Trevor, Veronica and Joaninha. We continue here.
Hey, it's Jack, giving just a new update on the Patreon page. We're rewarding loyalty and contributions in a new way now that we've been thinking about for some time. Now when you contribute at least $50 through your total lifetime, regardless of tier, you get your own individual storm animation made by our team. This is regardless of tier once again, so even if you donate $1 per month, after 50 months you'll get your own individual storm animation. But we do have all these other tiers and tons of other benefits to go along. If you want to get your own individual storm animation or help contribute to the project personally, feel free to use the link in the description or type in your browser www.patreon.com/Force13.
Along with the main Force 13 channel for our world audience, we have regional channels, Force 13 AU and Oceania, Force 13 UK and Ireland, and Force 13 US and Caribbean. These channels all need your support and involvement, so if you're in those areas, please check them out. A warm day in Queensland indeed. Now we're looking at that imagery again that we showed in the last hour. The International Space Station passed over Cyclone Veronica on March the 21st. And this is what it looked like. This was when it was really close to its actual peak. And there is the storm. Doesn't look quite as good now as it did then. Do we have David back with us? Nope, I'm staring at silence. We still don't have David with us. He'll be able to tell us more news when he returns. Alright, well that's not Veronica, that is Trevor, but this is Veronica right now. There it is, continuing to edge towards land, and that's what we've been covering probably the most in this hour. I did want to bring you though, instead now, to Cyclone Joaninha again. We're continuing to study the imagery as it comes in, and it's there somewhere. Really cold cloud tops appearing in that cyclone right now. This is the one in the southwest Indian Ocean, not far from the island of Rodrigues, and huge cloud tops, especially in the southeastern quadrant. We're watching this one very closely to see if this is a rapid intensification phase or whether it's just having a huge blow up, possibly in the face of high wind shear, which there's a bit of a telltale sign on the northern edge there that high wind shear could be playing a part, just in how big of a cliff edge it is from the coldest cloud tops to no clouds at all, just to the north. And also, if you've just joined us and you're wondering about the latest in terms of Cyclone Idai, the death toll there today has reached 638, with over 2,000 injured. A humanitarian disaster that continues over there in Eastern Africa, particularly in Mozambique, but not just there. I think it's 200 or so, or no, over 100 have been killed in Zimbabwe. I think it's 139, and there are still nearly 200 missing in Zimbabwe as well. But of course in Mozambique we still don't really know the number yet. We know of course at least 202 have been killed there. A lot of aid agencies and a lot of countries have been sending aid. The United Kingdom sending at least £12 million of aid to the region. A lot of UN organisations sending aid as well. We'll be back in just a moment. we continue with Force 13's live streaming service, and a lot to talk about, and a lot we have been speaking about so far. And I've no idea where my correspondent David has got to, though. If he can hear me, hopefully he'll be able to return at some point. And questions there about where has Strat been lately? We don't know. Strat's around there somewhere. Cyclone Trevor likely to make landfall a little bit later on today, before lunchtime perhaps. We've also got Cyclone Veronica, which continues to move towards the coast of Australia. I actually have to leave the desk briefly here. We're going to play some music for a few minutes whilst we continue to look at these storms on the automated streaming service.
AMD.
We return with Force 13 Live, coverage continuing here on the cyclone, the double cyclone threat for Australia this morning. I believe I'm now joined by Isaac.
Hello?
Hello. Don't sound surprised. Where do you want to start? We're still looking at all of these storms right now. We've been talking at length for nearly 2 hours on this so far, and we don't intend to stop anytime soon. Veronica?
Cool. Well, it's making... Oh, I don't know if it's making landfall right now. I haven't checked the radar in hours, but I know...
No,
Veronica.
We're looking at Veronica, and satellite imagery recently has been very intriguing.
Yeah. I know last I checked with Trevor, it had concentric eye walls, and Veronica was trying to reform its eye, albeit a little bit weaker and wider than it was before.
And do you think... I don't know. I don't know what is going on with that. What is that little bit of cloud in the centre of the storm? Is that... Don't tell me it's another concentric eye wall. I don't think it is.
Be just radar interference. But yeah, I see the concentric eye walls quite clearly on the radar here. I'm going to pull up screen share a little bit, but I'm just getting everything sorted right now.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, it's definitely still there. Looks like the outer eye wall is shortly gonna be over land soon.
Oh, you're talking about Trevor.
Yeah, the outer eye wall of Trevor.
Well, look at Veronica, because I think there could be something going on there as well.
There goes T. Let's pull up the Bureau of Meteorology.
All right. Well,
last I checked, it had one solid eye wall.
Yeah.
Check. Let's see here. Yeah, it looks like. I mean, maybe it's birds. I want to say it could be birds that are trapped in the eye.
You think so?
I mean, that's happened before with the most recent example I can think of off the top of my head is Matthew. There was some radar interference, and it ended up being birds trapped in the eye of the hurricane.
Yes, but Matthew had been over land a few times by then, hadn't it?
Yeah, but these birds may have, I don't know, it's either birds or...
I don't know either.
A cloud rolling on around through the eye wall here.
Alright, well, whilst you're still getting all your things sorted here, let's go and remind ourselves. I know some of our trackers will know all about the differences, but some out there may be a little bit confused with our terminology. We're going to run a very short video here on what the Australian scale and the Saffir Simpson scale, what their differences are mainly, in this short video clip here, whilst Isaac gets ready. See reference to two tropical cyclone scales concerning the Australian region: the worldwide used Saffir Simpson hurricane wind scale developed in the United States in the 1970s, and the Australian scale, which is adopted in the Australia region and in the South Pacific region and has been in use since the late 1980s. The key difference as to why the scales are different is because the Australian scale begins at the tropical storm stage for giving its numerical categories, whereas the hurricane scale, the Saffir Simpson scale, begins at category 1 when the storm actually becomes an actual hurricane. The Australian scale covers all cyclones, the Saffir Simpson scale only hurricanes. So, category 1 on the scale covers 74 to 95 mile/hour winds on the Saffir Simpson scale, 39 to 55 miles an hour on the Australian scale. A recent example of a category 1 is Cyclone Linda in 2018. Category 2 covers a little bit higher, 96 to 110 miles an hour on the Saffir Simpson scale, 56 to 73 on the Australian scale. A recent example of that, Cyclone Penny in 2019, along with a few others there on that list. Category 3 covers hurricanes on both scales, the Saffir Simpson scale 111 to 129 miles an hour, in Australia 74 to 98. A recent example of a Category 3 storm on the Australian scale was Cyclone Riley. Category 4 covers 130 to 156 mile an hour winds on the Saffir Simpson scale, 99 to 124 in Australia. This covers Cyclone Savannah in early 2019 on the Australian scale. And finally, Category 5 on the Saffir Simpson scale, 157 miles an hour or more. In Australia, 125 miles an hour or more. Pictured Cyclone Marcus in 2018, a Category 5 on both scales. Alright, well, we did have it there. Here it is, Cyclone Trevor. And Isaac, your thoughts in general on Trevor as we look at it right now? Not far from landfall?
Well, it's been trying its best to, looks like it's trying its best to ramp up here, but...
well, does it though? It looks quite... it looks like a typical storm trying and failing in the Gulf of Carpentaria. It's really having a go at it. It's got massive cloud tops, but that's what you expect in this part of the world. Baking hot sea surface temperatures. It just can't get its structure right.
Pretty much. As you can see, it still has that concentric eye wall in it as well, too. Even though the frames are kind of messed up, but it still has it. Whether or not it weakens or not, it still won't lessen impact by much where it's at. The good thing, though, for the most part, is where it's making landfall. It's quite sparsely populated, with the exception to the west of it. We have, I think it's called Center Island to the west of it.
Yep.
There. But where it's generally going to make landfall, it's relatively sparsely populated until you get farther inland.
So would you say that the hurricane force winds from this storm will probably miss everyone? Or most people?
I mean, maybe Eastern Center Island might get it, because they might be getting to the outer eye wall here.
Right.
It depends. Really, I would say it really depends how fast this thing starts the weekend when it goes over land, really.
Yes, more people I think are interested in Veronica because there's more people in the way of the storm. And as we look at that one again, I'm still trying to figure out what's going on there. I've never thought it was actually an inner eye wall. I still don't think it is, because I'm not seeing any rotation in it. So I think it's just baggage, I suppose, being lugged around the center of the eye, and it's just not able to clear itself out, and it's having trouble closing off that eye wall as well. It's completely in different spirals in and out, and it's not managing to get the circulation properly there, is it?
No.
And it's probably going to do that all the way up until landfall, don't you think?
Maybe it might. Right.
Now here's the thing, we're going to run the little video about the history of Western Australian storms again shortly. And on that list, none of them really stalled when they struck Western Australia. You just sort of get the feeling, is this just going to be one that's going to end up stalling on the coast, like we've seen so many storms do recently? When in actual fact, climatologically speaking, it is pretty rare for a storm of this strength to stall on the coast. They usually go straight in or curve round and hug the coast.
I have my screen share up right now currently. Just barely got it up.
Alright, so what are we looking at here?
On the left, you see Veronica, and on the right is Trevor.
Quite clear how those double eye walls on Trevor.
Indeed, and you can see Center Island to the west of it. Looks like it might get brushed by the outer eye wall by the looks of it.
And Borroloola a bit further west there as well. What's that location in the southeast there with the blue dot?
The blue dot, that is, let's see here, that's Gunta? I think it's Guna, if I'm not mistaken how you say it. I don't know how to exactly say it.
I can't even read it, so I can't help.
Yeah, I think it's Guna, something. I don't know how to say it, but it's a little city there on an island there. That's where the radar is. So
Is it?
Yeah, the radar is right about here where the blue dot's at, and the same for about this blue dot where Veronica's at, the Veronica radar here. See if I could go to the Bureau of Meteorology here and get a wider view of Veronica.
Well, this will paint a picture a bit more about the actual rainfall amounts that we're seeing.
See, there's Veronica right here on the Bureau of Meteorology radar. This is a composite of the other radars around the general region, and I combine them together to make this one little radar GIF here. You see a Veronica.
Yes, and its movement still due south in those frames, would it be? Or is it a bit eastward now?
I can't tell because it's just 6 frames, but, well, actually, let me go back to this one because there's more frames here. Let's see. Yeah, it looks generally south, I would say. Maybe jogging a little bit here and there, but otherwise it looks to be staying just maybe due south, I would say, on the radar.
A question, what about the one in the northeast of Mauritius? We have been discussing that a few times. Cyclone Joaninha. We will cover that one again in the next hour. We'll have some more imagery, I think, on that one. Rodrigues, completely need to watch out for that. To finish this hour, we're going to take another look back here at the history of Western Australian landfalls, and maybe we can draw some comparisons to some of these storms here. Let's see if we can play that now. Western Australia has regularly received significant tropical cyclone landfalls over the last 30 to 40 years, and we're going to take a look at some of those now. In February 1975, Cyclone Trixie made landfall near Onslow as a Category 4 on the Saffir Simpson scale, Category 5 on the Australian scale. It caused damage to 37 buildings and caused over $6 million in damages. In December of that year, Cyclone Joan arrived and made landfall west of Port Hedland as a Category 5 on the Australian scale, and also a Category 5 on the Saffir Simpson scale according to Force 13's analysis, upgrading the storm. In 1980, Cyclone Amy made landfall just east of Pardue as a very significant cyclone, and Cyclone Orson arrived at the end of the decade in 1989, probably the strongest landfall out of all of them that have struck this region. This was promptly followed by Cyclone Ian in 1992 and Cyclone Bobby in 1995, both making Category 3 landfalls on the Australian scale, and Olivia in 1996 provided the strongest wind gust in the world. 1999 was also a very busy year in Western Australia. Cyclone Vance made landfall in March, followed by Gwenda in April, and then John in December. In 2004, Cyclone Monty caused severe flooding when it made landfall, and then Glenda followed 2 years later as a Category 3 on the Australian scale. Then we had George in 2007 making landfall east of Port Hedland, and the first one that Force 13 provided coverage of was Cyclone Rusty in 2013. The last storm of major hurricane strength to strike the region was Cyclone Christine at the end of 2013, although Kwang came close in 2015, weakening massively before it made landfall near Exmouth. So here's the latest on Cyclone Veronica, which continues to move in towards land at this time. Although it's still going to be a very slow thing, and we're going to be here for quite some time watching it do just that and keeping you up to date on every twist and turn up until landfall. Isaac, any news for us?
Not at the moment. I'm just looking through IR and radar currently, trying to find which one would be best to show here, and I'm showing Veronica, and you can see it's trying to really pull out that eye in the more recent frames, and yeah, it's just really trying to fix its eye. It's by the looks of it. Yeah, and I want to say, just looking at the mesoscale here, those clouds within the eye, or those dots in the eye that you see on meteorology radars. Likely, I would say probably just cloud cover that's kind of just stuck in the eye here of Veronica.
Looking very interesting on those frames. Nice close-up on the right-hand side, showing the progress of that. Well, it did a flare up on that southwestern side of the eye there, but it just looks a bit of a mess, doesn't it? It's struggling.
Yeah, that's been pretty much what it's been doing over the past 3 hours here. To go back
in
to
a
the
word,
radar.
struggling.
Here, right, Veronica here. You can see, still moving south by the looks of it. Let's go back to the meteorology because it shows a better view here, albeit a lower resolution. Yeah, it's just trying to get itself sorted pretty much. It looks like beforehand landfall, and whether it gets sorted out won't really be an issue here. I believe it's forecast to kind of just meander or stall around this general region over the next few days, which will give.
We'll get onto the updated Bureau of Meteorology map in the next hour, along with many other things. We'll probably look at models too. Latest image just out on Cyclone Trevor, first visible from the Himawari 8 satellite, is out, and you can see how it's looking there. Still doesn't look particularly convincing even on visible imagery. We'll leave you with this as we enter our next hour of coverage. This is Force 13 Live. We'll be back again soon. Continues in a moment. You can follow Force 13's outlets, the website force13.com, our YouTube page, youtube.com/Force13, on Facebook under the same name, Force13, and our Twitter handle, it's @Force13 if you wish to get in touch. You can also add Force13 on Skype, and my personal account on Discord, Fool13, at extension 9094.